Hello everyone, this is JG1 Barton, and in this video we're going to be going over taxiing, taking off, and landing in the Bf-109. So this is an introduction to the basics of this aircraft. We're going to be performing this in the Bf-109E7 specifically because this version has manual radiators for oil and water radiators. All of the other variants, these things are automated, so you don't have to worry about them. Also, all of the Bf-109 versions handle very similarly in all three of these cases. So the things that we're going to go over here in this video are going to translate into the F4 or the G4 or the G6 or the K4 or any other variant of the Bf-109. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need to set your key mapping for your tail wheel, and that is going to be under plane controls. We're going to come down here. Also, elevator trim, although that's not necessarily elevator trim in the Bf-109. If you set elevator trim up and down for the Bf-109, you're not going to get it because it's actually the adjustable stabilizer. So you're going to need to use that up and down. Also, tailwheel lock and unlock. We're going to be going over that. That's going to be very, very important for taxiing in this aircraft. You're going to want to make sure that the tail wheel is locked for the majority of the time because the narrow landing gear is going to make this very easy to spin around uncontrollably if you don't stay on top of your turning rate on the ground. Also, engine controls you're going to be looking at, and this is one of the things that's kind of confusing in this game because they have different oil radiators and water radiators. But for the Bf-109, it says here Bf-109 110 and British aircraft water radiator open and close. You're going to want to set those, and also for your oil radiator. But if you're not flying the E7, those don't matter. So let's get into flying the plane. So we come in, we're going to look at our instrument panel, and for all Bf-109s, what we want to look at is our manifold pressure gauge. This is an ATA, which I think is bar. And then we have our RPM gauge. That one's going to be really important. That's revolutions per minute times 100. Then we have here on the left our altimeter in kilometers, so 0.1 is 100 meters. And below here is our airspeed indicator. Another very important thing here is going to be our turn and bank indicator and our slip angle indicator at the ball down there, because this aircraft does have a very large rudder, and your slip angle is going to change a lot during your maneuvering. So it's very important to keep that straight for your shots and also maintaining your best performance. Down here for the E7, things that are important to stay on top of because these are manually controlled in this aircraft. On the left in Celsius you have your oil temperature, and on the right in green you have your water temperature. Keep both of those around 100 and you'll be fine. Maybe a little bit less. In this aircraft we don't have to worry about our mixture. That's controlled automatically. We are going to go ahead and close our canopy. Make sure you do that. It's a very obvious rookie mistake when people don't close their canopy online and fly off without it. And we're going to hit E and start our start procedure and wait for this thing to turn on. Like I said before when we were going over the controls, the Bf-109 has a very narrow track landing gear, and that means that if you start going in one direction, the aircraft is going to load up. Let's say you start going to the left, the aircraft's going to load up on the right wheel, and that's going to dig in because of the camber of that wheel, and it's going to maintain that turn. So we don't want that to get out of hand, which means that we're going to be using very slow taxiing speeds. So we're going to come up until we start to roll. We're going to use the rudder, here if you can see, to maintain our straight path. You are going to have to be very active on the rudder and the toe brakes in order to keep this thing straight and controllable. Down here we have the indication, or that's the actual lever for the tail wheel release. You will need that for tight turns, although you can make turns with the tail wheel locked. Taxiing with the tail wheel unlocked is going to mandate much slower speeds and much more consideration in your control inputs. These brakes do not perform very well, so you're going to have to ride them pretty hard. But just to show, we have a tail wheel locked now. Even with the tail wheel locked, we can still move the nose and follow the taxiway. So doing just fine here. Coming up to the runway, we're going to go ahead and get started with our setup for takeoff. We're going to move the oil radiator fully closed. I try not to get too fast here. And we are going to close the water radiator. Just to let our temperatures come up a little bit. Tail wheel release, and we're going to line up with the runway. Once we have lined up with the runway, we are going to hit the lock tail wheel button, and then we are going to move forward so that our tail wheel does lock, because it is not currently quite straight. But as we move forward, the tail wheel is locked. Now for trim. So this little dial right here with the number 5 on it, that's our indicator for our trim setting. And typically for takeoff, I have this set at 0, which is about 40%, if you can see on the right. That's going to give us a nice ease into a perfect climb after our takeoff roll. We do not use any flaps for this takeoff. They're not necessary unless you have a bomb and, say, a shorter runway. This is our indicator for this handle here with the green label. That is our handle for adjusting the radiators, the water radiators, and we are going to move that 1 rotation, or 50%, for our takeoff, and we are going to move the water, or the oil, excuse me, I'm sitting here moving the water by accident. We're going to move the oil to about 10%, and we're going to leave it about there. You don't really need to adjust that much during your flight, regardless of how fast or slow you're going. If you really need all of the airspeed in the world to get out of a situation, you can close that completely, and it'll take a little while for your engine to overheat. But with this aircraft, you do have to keep an eye on your radiators and your water and oil temperature. So when we go into our takeoff roll, we're going to have to use right rudder to counteract the amount of torque that this aircraft has, because this DB engine has a lot of torque. So we're not going to stand on the brakes, but you can if you want. We're just going to ease into the power. And exactly what RPM you're going to use is going to, or what manifold pressure you're going to use, is going to depend on what version of this aircraft you're flying. We're going to use the right rudder to keep ourselves straight down the runway, a little bit of forward pressure to bring the nose down so we can get a good look at the runway. And as we bring the stick back to neutral, we're going to give a little bit of back pressure, and we're going to rotate, bring our gear up, get our airspeed, make sure the ball is right in the middle, continue to accelerate to about 270 kilometers an hour. That is our best climb speed, and we're going to come back on our engine power to continuous at 2200 RPM and 1.15 ATA. Now, as you can tell, I have, well, you might not be able to tell, but I have almost no input into the stick whatsoever, and my aircraft is trimmed to fly at about 280 kilometers an hour in a climb, and this is a really good climb rate for this aircraft. So now let's bring it around and set it up for landing, and I'll go ahead and skip to that part. Okay, we're in our downwind, we're doing less than 300 kilometers an hour. I'm going to go ahead and drop our gear by pressing the G key, and then we're going to bring our RPM back to about 2000 and begin dropping our flaps. Dropping flaps is F, not Shift F. As our flaps come all the way down, we're going to maintain our visual on the runway, and we're going to turn into our base. Flaps are at 100, airspeed is at 200 kilometers an hour. That's where we're going to want to keep it. And we're going to trim our plane at -2. Or 0% stabilizer. As we come in, we're going to maintain about 200. That's going to give us a nice nose down attitude. That way we can see the runway. And as we come into our threshold, we're going to chop our throttle and pitch back and rotate into a nice and gentle 3-point position for our landing. Nice little bounce there. Not going to overcorrect. And a nice gentle touchdown. We're going to let this aircraft roll out using our rudder to keep the thing straight again, and toe brakes. Do not mash the toe brakes. Do not land with the tail brake or the tail wheel lock unlocked. That is not going to end well. I can guarantee it. So now we are completely stopped on the runway. We're going to go ahead and vacate the active. And that's the end of it. So, very easy to bring down. But if you do it wrong, this thing is going to punish you. If you are not patient and you do not treat this aircraft exactly the way it wants to be treated, it will make your life miserable. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any more questions or comments, or an idea for another tutorial, please leave them in the comment section of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a good day.